we go, talking about press releases. These are going to be so useful when something's happening on campus or in the community, to communicate what's happening and to get media there, to get other participants there. So why write a press release? You've got social media, other forms of communication. People might think that traditional press releases kind of are a relic of the past, but press releases still have high value as a way of getting information out, especially to the media. Our pals at Cision, which is the program that we help get contact information for different outlets and stuff, they're always looking at the landscape of media. They found that 73% of journalists surveyed for their 2019 State of the Media report, which I find a truly interesting report. If you have time, you can click on that link and learn a whole lot more about the state of media in 2019. So 73% of journalists wanted to receive press releases, more so than any other type of content information. So as an editor, I really enjoyed press releases. It gave a quick way for me to find out about something, decide if I wanted to go and be a part of it or to send somebody to cover it. And now, as someone who's sending the press release, it's a way to let folks know what's happening. We sent out press releases when we had our big event against ALEC in Arizona a couple months ago, and as Sam can attest, it worked great, and we had some excellent coverage from the press because we did a lot of outreach. But again, simply with a press release, there was very little other way that we reached out to people, and it worked. So when should you write a press release? Anytime you have something newsworthy to share, and the newsworthy part is the newsworthy part is important. Not everything that you do, unfortunately, is considered newsworthy. So what does that mean? Well, a breaking news announcement. News outlets want to be the first to cover something when it breaks. So a well-written press release is going to help you deliver that timely information. And again, similar to the op-ed, breaking news can either be good or bad. Just a little bit ago, we received a lot of press after sharing the sad news that Transparent GMU did not win their Virginia Supreme Court case. We had been following that. We did an action at the courthouse when they heard the case a few months earlier, back in, I believe, September. And our media contacts knew we were waiting on this result. And so when it came, it was not a win in our favor, but we were able to turn that and take that loss and add our stamp to it. Talk about, like what Sam was saying, how we're now going to fight, right? So we're able to craft the narrative around that story. Here's why the case is important, and this is why we're going to continue to push for justice despite the ruling. This is why this ruling is dangerous, and this is why we need to continue to fight. And that way, you can help control the narrative around how media is going to report on the story as well, and center yourselves as experts on that story. So events, say you want the media to cover an event you're doing, whether that's a protest, whether that is going and dropping off signatures at the administration's office and demanding, having, maybe it's a sit-in at an administration's office or something like that. So a press release is an easy way to communicate what's happening, when, where. And also sharing research and data. If, say, new information comes up about donors, or information comes up about specific ways you found out that money is being used, maybe you had a FOIA come back, so you now have new information you want to share. A press release is a great way to share those insights, whether that's data that you guys found or data that was found on a larger scale, and then you're showing how your university, your campus in particular, fits into that larger trend. So similar to the op-ed, finding those larger news hooks can sometimes work for your benefit on a press release.
And Avi, if I can add something to that real quick. I just want to emphasize that folks should not underestimate your power or the value of your work. And to give an example of what I mean by that, so I oftentimes recommend that within 3 weeks of launching a campus campaign, that a student organization that is, bottom lining that campaign hosts an online webinar for their partners. Those partners could be other student organizations, local community-based organizations, even state-based organizations that they have contacts with, to allow those partners to learn more about why they're launching this campaign against the Koch network, and allow those partners to commit to supporting or endorsing their campaign. I know when I was a student, I didn't think something like that was newsworthy, and I oftentimes don't see students that I work with think that a lot of the activities that they do like that are newsworthy, but it is. Even though it is a webinar, and even if all you have are 15 people on that webinar, it's newsworthy. If those 15 people are representing other student groups, other community or state-based organizations, what you just did was you just trained 15 other organizations in how to fight the Koch network. If that's what your webinar was how you wanted to build a campaign to disrupt the Koch network's agenda by kicking them off of your college campus, and you just talked to 15 representatives of other student organizations or community organizations about why that's important and how they can work with you to make that happen, you just trained 15 organizations on how to take on the Koch network. That could be your press release title. And so I just wanted to insert that example because sometimes I think we get in our heads that the only thing that's newsworthy is like a big direct action or someone gets arrested, but that's not the case. Political education and training tactics are also really critical, especially when it's talking about something so big as the Koch network. Having college students training other people on how to take on the Koch network is really valuable, and I would really encourage folks to just release a press release around those types of activities.
It's a great suggestion, Sam. Thank you. Press releases versus media advisory. So sometimes I send out a press release, sometimes I send out a media advisory. What is the difference, and will you really need to know that? So while you will mostly be sending out press releases, occasionally you'll send out a media advisory. It's going to be formatted the same way for the most part, but you just label it media advisory and then your subject, versus press release and your subject when you're sending it out to your press contacts. So when do you do these? Well, you use a media advisory for actions or events before they happen. So when we were sending out information about our ALEC protest, our ALEC conference protest in Arizona, for about a week or so before, we sent out a media advisory that was embargoed, meaning we did not want the press to report on it until the day of the event, which is important. And it gives the press time to schedule. It allows them to send out somebody to cover it. It allows them to fit it into their editorial calendar so that they'll know that they'll have a story on it. A little typo there, but sent out a week before so you want to send it out a week before they take place. A press release is for breaking news, announcements, new resources, data dissemination, and info on an event that recently happened. So you're sending out a press release. We sent out a press release with our statement when David Koch died, because that was breaking news. We send out a press release when we want to talk about maybe a campus just started a new grassroots campaign related to something that's happening in local government. So we'll send out a press release about that. Maybe we got the new data related to Koch donations for 2018, 2019. And so we wanted to send out a press release and then factor in how Koch fits into that. So that's when you would use a press release. All right, how to write a press release. So one of the most important parts, just like in your op-ed, that first line, one of the most important parts of your press release is the headline. That should serve as your news hook, meaning why a media outlet, a press outlet should be interested in what you're saying. The headline is sometimes the only thing they'll see. If the headline is not interesting to them, that press release is going in the trash before it's even opened as an email. So you really want to, I'm not saying to have a sensational headline, but you want to have one that is succinct, talks about what's happening, and is engaging. So you also uses the subject line in your email that you send out, or as a modified shortened version if you can't fit it all in. Your headline should sum up the main point of your press release. Tell the reader who and what, and should include the most newsworthy aspect of the piece. The headline should be clear and concise and no more than 2 lines. Ideally, it should be shorter. 1 line is ideal. 2 if you absolutely have to. Depends on what you're talking about. And for formatting, and don't worry, we have an example and a sample press release later, but just for your notes, you should center that headline and make sure it's in bold print on the actual press release itself. Again, their eyes are going to be drawn to it. It's the first thing that anyone's going to see, and it's going to set the stage for what's to come. Next, the intro. So the intro is kind of a buddy to the headline. It expands upon what you wrote in the headline. It provides a little bit more information, more detail about who you are and what you're going to be discussing in the next couple of paragraphs. And a press release ideally should not be more than 1 page, right? I don't have a word count off the top of my head because formatting can be different for different press releases, but it should really stick to 1 page. So the intro should be succinctly written for a general audience. If you are promoting an event, so if this is a media advisory, this is where you'll share the when and the where. Next is the body. This is your chance to explain why your press release matters and should be covered by the media. So you've told them what it is, what the main point is, and here's where you're going to tell them why anyone would care. So you don't want to have too many. I said 2 to 3 paragraphs through the body. If you're not doing quotes, that's great. If you're having quotes, I would stick to maybe 2 paragraphs. So here's the section that will help get your audience excited about covering your story or event. Why are people going to be curious about it? Why do people want to learn more about it? Why should a story be written about it? Link to digital actions where applicable. So here's why working with Uncoke to develop a digital action landing page for whatever campaign you're working on is key. It allows the editor or the reporter to see that there's some kind of physical manifestation. You're not just talking about this, that if you're talking about a campaign, you can link to your university landing page on our site that shows people can sign up or have been signing up. And you can say, you know, with our campaign page, we've already had 200 folks sign up in the first 3 days alone of launching our campaign. So 1, it promotes yourself, it promotes your actions, and also allows the reporter, the editor to see exactly what you're putting out there and how you're hooking people into your campaign. All right, and here's just some kind of basics, journalism, press release 101. These are what journalists and editors are going to be wondering when they get your press release, because this is what they're going to use to write their stories. And what a press release is basically making their job as easy as possible so they want to write the story. So who are the important people in your story? What are the key facts the reader should know? Where did this news happen, or where will it take place? When did this news happen, or when will it take place? Why is this something that readers should care about? And how did the story come about? So if this is talking about a campaign or a new development of an ongoing campaign tactic, share what's already happened. So when we did the press release for the GMU Virginia Supreme Court case, we gave a quick recap of how the court case came about, how the students brought up the issue of donor transparency, the original, what happened when they went to court, and then, of course, the outcome, and then what it all meant. All right, so one really strong way to make your press release sing for a variety of reasons is quotes. Quotes are great because they make it, again, you're wanting to make this as easy for the journalist and the outlet as possible. So journalists can use your press release to write a short piece or a news hit without needing to get back to you. If your press release is solid, there's already a quote in there so that they can include that in their piece. And they can, especially if it's breaking news worthy, they can get it out ASAP because, like we mentioned before, outlets want to be the first to report on something. So while we would love to share more about our news events, journalists are busy and don't always have the time. Press releases should provide enough information and tangible sources for them to be able to write a compelling piece for their audience simply off of the press release alone, which is why those links are also very important. And I highly also recommend, since you'll be bringing in an Uncoke aspect to the Uncoke My Campus aspect to these press releases, to link to our site that will provide them with a wealth of information and contextual information to write the story. You want to ensure that quotes are strong, meaningful, and add a unique personal take on the story. And don't ramble. You don't want to go over 3 to 4 sentences. This isn't an op-ed within a press release, so you want to keep the quotes short but meaningful. And Sam is going to talk about what a good quote is versus a not great quote.
Yeah. So a common challenge I see folks make with the quotes that they put in a press release is that their quotes are actually the event details rather than responses or perspectives on those event details. So this is an example that I pulled from a press release that we did with the students at George Mason around that the lawsuit that they filed in Virginia. To be clear, the student at George Mason gave a great quote. I messed it up here for this example. So a less than ideal quote would be, "We filed a lawsuit in February. Our lawsuit claims that the GMU Foundation is doing work for a public school, so it should be held to the same disclosure standards as the university itself," said X student from Transparent GMU, which is our campus partner at George Mason University. So that whole quote is just a bunch of details about what the case is. Instead, those 2 sentences could actually just be standalone sentences, a standalone paragraph that's describing the event in the body of your press release, and then a quote to back up what you just said. So a better quote would actually be what Gus did say, which was, "We are very disappointed in Judge Tran's decision. We believe the public has a right to know the details of our university's operations, including its relationship with private donors." So essentially, Gus responded to the content above it that detailed the event and detailed why they had sued their school and why they were going to court. But Gus added a little bit of emotion to it. "We're disappointed in the decision. And this is why I'm invested in this work, because I believe the public has a right to know what's going on." So when you read your quotes, or you're asking a partner, asking someone in your organization to provide you with a quote for a press release, read them to ensure that they're actually like substantial and meaningful and have a little bit of a personal angle to it, rather than it just being a reproduction of the event details.
Right, and from this example, a journalist can certainly write a really good, quick news hit, and they would have an excellent quote that you would think came from an interview or something like that, which is the ideal. Okay, so how to write a press release, the boilerplate. What's a boilerplate? It's a short paragraph at the end that acts as a bio so that people understand who is writing this who's releasing this press release. So it's going to be a bio for your group. It gives journalists some context about who you are, how you're connected to the story or the event you're planning. It should be short, just a couple sentences. It should offer a brief background and some relevant information about your nonprofit organization or your grassroots campaign. And here's where you can make your connection to Uncoke My Campus. You can also do that within the press release, but if there isn't an opportunity for whatever reason, this is where you could do it. And right under the boilerplate, that's where you'll include whether your team is available for interviews. And you'll see a little bit later on, we do have an example of our boilerplate and a potential one for what you could possibly have as well. Oops, sorry about that. Tips. So things you'll need a contact person. So when you send out a press release, identify who's going to be responsible if the media gets in touch with you. Sometimes they'll want more quotes than just what was available within the press release. So you'll need somebody to be there to provide those, whether those are quotes that have been collected but were not used in the press release, or fresh quotes if they've got questions that need to be answered. So you need someone to manage communication. You're going to include their information, their name, email, and phone number, so that they're easy to get in touch with you if they want to write a story right away. Include things in order of newsworthiness. So your headline's the main point. From there, you'll list your information in order of news appeal, with the most important facts first, especially if it's a event. You're going to want to know the where and the when right up top. Don't forget to thread in your group's messaging throughout the press release. Include common calls for action if applicable. I think the example that we showed a little bit that Sam went over with Gus's quote shows that beautifully. It talked about what they were fighting for, why they were disappointed, and how they're not going to give up, and what they're going to continue to do. If you have images, that's awesome. Include them. This helps put a face to your message, and it makes it easier for journalists to find an appropriate one to accompany the story. And there's a really cool press release analyzer I'm going to click on. You can put in your headline and your intro and body text, and they will, and if you have an image, you can include that, and they will analyze it and let you know how strong it is. It's not foolproof. It's not, better than showing it to another person necessarily, but if you are struggling with that headline, it could be a great place to kind of go and check it, just to give yourself either that boost of confidence you need, or the suggestion to go back to the drawing board and try again.
And Avi, if one of our partner organizations or student groups need that second pair of eyes, are you available to take a look at it if they get it to you in time?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Especially if this is a media advisory, so you guys have some time to work on it before you send it out. That's great. If it's something that's more timely, just like you would be sending it out to an editor with timely in the email, do that for me as well, and I will happily look it over, give you some suggestions, or whatever feedback you're looking for. So be clear and specific about what you're looking for. I just did this in connection with our social media manager with an action that took place at George Washington University a couple weeks ago. We helped them with their press and media outreach, and they were really helpful for that, thankful for that, and they got a lot of great press, both on their campus and locally. So we are happy, and that's why I'm here.
Awesome. One more tip that I want to mention, or like an addition I want to add to the tip at the top, which is decide on a contact person and put that person on your press release. This is really, useful and easy to streamline if you have full-time staff at an organization, right? But the reality of student organizing is that students are oftentimes balancing student activism with full-time or part-time work, as well as full-time or part-time classes. And so if you do an action, let's say, and you put your name on a press release, you might be in class when that reporter calls you. And so if you do have concerns around whether or not someone from your team will actually be able to be responsive in a timely manner to reporters before or after an action, or even during an action, that's another thing I would recommend you do, like you reach out to us about. We could consider or talk about putting one of our contact information on that press release instead. That way we can actually manage that relationship until we can pass them off to you. So if you're gonna do this action and then you have a whole evening full of classes and everyone else in your team is also busy or has to go to work, and you're really worried about how responsive you can be to the media, we can fill in those gaps, manage those relationships, and just let them know this is a reality of working with students. They'll be out of class, by 6 p.m. and we'll make sure that they give you a call back. So if you can give us a heads up, if you already foresee that you might have that issue, we can work with you to make sure that you don't lose a media opportunity, but that you can still do the things that you need to do during your day.
Okay. So what we have here are templates, because sometimes it's just easy to be able to pop stuff in. So here is an example of a press release. This is actually one of our press releases that you can see. Here we go. We got a strong headline that says who and what. GMU students and faculty demand school administration disaffiliate from Koch-funded centers on campus now. So then we have an intro that follows that makes clear what the press release is about and provides a bit of context and shares that newsworthy angle. The bolded part is what we're asking them to do. Then we give a little bit of a background in this following paragraph. We include a solid, impactful quote that again is providing that unique perspective rather than just regurgitating information. And then we share that interviews are available. And here's our boilerplate. So Uncook My Campus is a nonprofit organization working to increase transparency on campus and fighting attempts by corporate donors like the Koch brothers from influencing education. Our network includes grassroots campaigns made up of students, faculty, alumni, and community members who have seen firsthand the undue influence Koch money has on campus in the form of undisclosed quid pro quo arrangements that give them a say on curriculum, hiring decisions, and research outcomes. Of course, we have so much more we could say about Uncook My Campus, but this provides context, a summarized description of what we do, and hopefully also entices people to learn more about us. And then if you would like to have a template for yourself, I would like to say before y'all send out a press release with our logo on it, maybe get in touch to let us know you'll be doing that. If you want to send out something in connection with us. Otherwise, you can put your logo here. Immediate release, you add in your date, your contact person, headline, intro, body paragraph, quotes. Of course, you could have more or less paragraphs. This is just simple template, interview. And then here's a sample boilerplate that you can include. So your local organization name there. So let's say Transparent GMU seeks to, and then you include a sentence or two about what your specific mission is. And they are a local partner of the national nonprofit Uncook My Campus. And then one quick sentence. So you could see how I distilled our boilerplate into one little sentence there. So here's my email address, media@uncookmycampus.org. So if you have any questions along the way, either for press releases or op-eds, I'm happy to check in, provide some feedback, provide some support, whatever it is you might be looking for. So next steps. Once your press release is written and ready to go, like I said, especially if you're using our logo and our name, please send it to us so we can help distribute it. One, so we can look it over, make sure everything's good to go, but also so we can distribute it to our national and local pitch lists. We can upload it to our website, promote it to our social media, really help you get the word out there so you're not just dependent on your own team. We're part of your team as well. So we want to help in any way we can.